Today we're talking about how to grind a tool, a cutting tool for your screwdriver. You need to take a blank of steel, get this from the professor or from my graduate student, and you need to take and grind this to the shape that you need it for machining aluminum. For aluminum, we actually need a tool that the top of the tool has to have an angle on it. It's called a positive rake tool, and the reason for that is so that as you cut, say this is your screwdriver that you're cutting, as this material comes along and gets chipped off, okay, we want to have a nice smooth surface for it to run over. If this was flat, like this tool here, it's going to have to come off and make a 90-degree angle, okay? So by putting a positive rake angle on the tool, it doesn't have to go through such an increase change in angle, and that therefore your aluminum is less likely to stick to your cutting tool. Okay, so what we need to do is, these are much larger, of course, than the cutting tools you're going to be using. They're 1/4 of an inch square, and this is a piece of high-speed steel, and we're going to grind this to the proper dimensions. Okay, so the first step is we want to make sure that the end of the tool is oriented correctly. Okay, we need what this is called end relief. Okay, this relief here, the reason why we have to grind this angle on here is so that when we're cutting, we're not rubbing the nose of our tool against our workpiece. So you have to watch that. When your tool becomes worn, it will actually get a flat spot on the surface here, and then we'll have to regrind it and sharpen it again. Okay, these tool blanks that I'm giving you already have this angle ground on the surface, so you're already partway there. The second thing we have to do is put a side angle on this. Okay, this side angle is going to allow the chips to come off and away from the workpiece, and it creates a slightly wider chip when you're cutting. So we want to put this side angle on here. The other thing we want to do is make sure that there's also some relief on the side. So not only is it angled this way from the end, so you're going to take and we're going to grind the end of our part. We'll put a small angle on the same angle here. You can compare these parts, your tool to this wood piece here. Then we're also going to have to put an angle on the side of it. Okay, if you want, you can grind just this side flat first, and then we can put the angle on it. So that's what I'm going to show you over at the grinder right now. Okay, make sure that the vent's on and your vent is open up here. Sure that. You have to open this vent in order for it to become active on the particular grinder that you're using. Okay. Make sure that the wheel is nice and sharp and dressed, and that if it's bouncing around on there, come and talk to me so that we can get the wheel dressed and make it nice and smooth. Okay. What we're going to do is very carefully start to grind on the side of this. Remember that we want to keep this cool so that we don't temper the high-speed steel blank here. We're actually going to grind some, cool it down, grind some more. So don't leave it up against the grinding wheel for more than a few seconds at any time. Okay, look at it each time that you grind it. Okay, it's probably getting hot now. Cool it down. You want to look at what you're grinding more than grinding it, okay? Because you got to see how you're doing. You can see right now that I'm putting a slight angle on the top of it, okay? And I'm also putting the side angle on it at the same time. So I'm holding it. Can you zoom in on that? Just like this. Okay, this is going to take a little while. Grinding is not one of the fastest operations in the world. What you're going to want to do is grind a little bit at a time, and then when you put it back on the wheel, we have to find the same position that you were in before. It's a lot harder than it looks. You actually got to take and feel so that you're flat on there. If I go and I don't exactly get the same spot I was before, I'm going to put facets in here. It's going to look like facets on a diamond, sort of. Okay, right there, you can see now, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that in the video? There's two different angles on there. I want to try to avoid that. I want to keep it all as one smooth angle there. Okay, I can take that facet out if I grind it for a little longer on one spot, and always put it back in the same spot. Okay, we're almost there. You can see we have a nice angle on the side. You see the angle going back towards the bottom. The angle should kind of match the nose angle, the end relief angle here. Okay, so we're not quite there. We need to grind a little bit more. And I want to compare this. You can see the angles are parallel there, so I'm doing pretty well. I got the right angle on there. Okay, but I need to need to make it a little bit sharper at the tip here. It's a little bit too wide at the tip. Okay, so we're going to do a little more. Okay, now we have it pretty much about as sharp as we want it, and we do have some relief on the side of it. Okay, so the end relief and these two lines, you can see the break point here, and your angle of the end should be about parallel to each other. You can see how they're pretty parallel to each other. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now what we want to do is we want to round the end a little bit, and also put an angle on the top of the tool. This is always the hardest point, hardest part to do. I'm going to first put the rake angle onto the tool. So I need to go parallel. Let's see here. I need to go parallel with this top edge, an angle back into it. So what I need to do is pretend that this top edge here is a hinge, and I'm going to pivot on this hinge. Okay. So as I put it up there, I want this surface here to be parallel with my tool rest and parallel to the ground. And I'm going to pivot that towards the grinding wheel. So let's get a close-up to that. So now I have this edge is parallel with my tool rest, but I want to cut back into it. So I'm going to come in here and I grind. Notice how I'm grinding into the surface. This edge is parallel with that little facet I made in there. That's good. We want those to be parallel. Okay? Be really careful. Your finger is very close to the wheel. See, I'm bringing that in there. It's coming up parallel. Okay, I'm going to pull it down now. It's going to get hot, so be careful. Don't use gloves. Gloves on a grinding wheel are dangerous. Okay, you see now I'm a little bit narrower at the end here, so that means I got to take more material up here. So I'm going to push a little harder and change the angle so that I'm pushing closer up here. Okay, I'm almost there. You can see I'm about just under a millimeter away from the edge, and I'm still parallel. That's really good, but you have to go all the way to the edge in order for that to be sharp on the surface. So this has to go all the way just to the edge, and just start to break that edge so that edge will be sharp. That's going to be your cutting edge right there. Okay, see now I have it sharpened all the way up to the edge. And I have to put a radius on the nose because I don't want it real sharp at this corner right here. So I'm going to radius the end here. Okay, here we are over in the manual machining area. This is the grinding section back here. We're going to use the high-speed steel grinder to do the final grinding on this tool bit. And you got to be careful with this grinder, though. It goes in two directions. Okay, so we want to make sure whichever side we're grinding on, it's going in the proper direction. We want the rotation like this, so it's going down. So when you turn this on, okay, that's the proper direction. Okay, so the switch goes to either direction, and so just make sure you're going the proper. If you're going the wrong direction and it's running, there's a brake over here. You push this little button here, Be real careful your fingers aren't sticking down the other side. We almost had someone take their thumb off in this a couple years ago. So when you put the brake on, keep your fingers up in the air here like that. Okay, that brake will slow it down. And now what we want to do is use the angle that's already set on this table to turn our nose radius, okay? It should be fairly parallel with the rake angles or the side angles that you already put on your bit. So I'm going to start on the side, rotate it around. Okay. Now let's take a look at that. We're not quite ground all the way up to the surface here. It's actually, we could actually take and make that one straight facet all the way up to the surface. Why don't we do that? This is a much finer grinding wheel, so you don't want to push too hard on it. If it seems like it's plugged up and it's not cutting very well, come and get me and we'll get it straightened up for you. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, now that we have the side done, you can see it's a nice smooth angle on the side. Flows around the front. I have a nice radius on the top, on the end here. And what I want to do now, I've already done some of it, is take and true up the surface that we have already rough ground on the top, the rake angle. Okay. Try not to grind your tool down too far. You want to keep the top edge parallel with the top edge of this. Otherwise, your machine won't be cutting on center. Okay, so you don't want to get your tool too short here. We're on the opposite end of the grinding wheel. This is set up with the right angle. Okay, I'm going to grind from the back side and then work my way up to the front. Okay, now we have the top at the right angle for the whole distance. So the final step is to take it to a oil stone and to take the burrs off of it. Okay, around the lab, probably sitting over on the bench for the drill press, there'll be an oil stone, and put a little bit of oil on it. And what we want to do is just remove the burrs, and you have to cut towards the cutting edge. Remember, the cutting edge is on the side over here, so you're going to push it towards the cutting edge. Only a few strokes is all you need. Okay, that takes the burrs off on that side. Now we want to do it on the top. Okay, and at this point we should have an edge. You can actually go around the radius a little bit too. Okay, we should have an edge that you could almost shave with. Okay, so we're ready to go over to the lathe.